At this stage in evolution, the primary work of the vital body is supporting the physical body. Yep. And despite the fact that it is so integrated into the physical body and does so much of that type of work, it is very different than the physical body. It has a character that is all its own. Each of our bodies, because of the stuff that they are made in, but for other evolutionary reasons, each of our bodies or vehicles has a kind of consciousness or character of its own. The general personality, which includes all of the bodies, the mind, the concrete mind, the desire body, the vital body, and the physical body, the general personality can sometimes act on its own. If the spirit is very weak, it will act on its own, and when that's the case, the desire body and the mind work together and they produce something like a very strange entity that happens extremely rarely, but it runs around for thousands of years. And since it has no spirit in it, it has no conscience. All of the vehicles, if given a chance, will act autonomously, and it'll do their own things. If the vital body is extremely strong and it takes over, it's very much like a mother, a new mother with a baby. It just attends to the body and attends to the body and attends to the body. The vital body likes to take care. It is the physical reflection of the life spirit. And the life spirit is the preserver, and it is the redeemer. And so those qualities are reflected into the vital body. So if it were left to its own, and the vital body were strong above all the other components of our being, you would have somebody that would be perfectly happy to live in a vegetative state. And there are people where the spiritual self and even some of the higher vehicles of the spiritual self don't get through. And then you have people that are like schizophrenic, vegetative people. They just sort of sit there. They don't get fat, but they do get somewhat rotund because, that's what the vital body wants to do. Now, the relationship of the vital body to the dense physical body is very old. It goes way back to the Sun period, when the vital body was being born and the physical body was being revamped to incorporate it and be able to function as a live thing. So there is a mutual relationship and a close symbiosis and intertwining between the vital body and the dense body. It is that way in that the vital body is closer to the spirit in terms of antecedents. Causes come from the spirit, and the physical world is the world of effects more than it is of causes. And for this reason, if there's a change in the health of the physical body, or change in health, period, the illness appears first in the vital body, and as does the restoration. You know how it is when you've been down with a flu or something like that, and then within you can feel yourself coming back, but it still hasn't made its way back into the physical body. And when that happens, you're in a state of awareness of the vital body because it's at a different stage of a process or of an activity. The dense physical body is built into the matrix or the form that is provided for it in the vital body. And so it's an interesting thing. In some way, the the vital body is suspended in the physical body, but in some ways the physical body is suspended in the vital body. I have a friend that had a very unusual circumstance. This is many years ago. In the early days of the telephone, this person got a DC shock from the telephone. The telephone had a short in it, and it displaced the vital body. And sometimes the legs were like dead almost, and the person felt like they were 3 feet above the head. And then sometimes the vital body was down in the ground, interpenetrating the ground, and the vital body head was about here. And the demarcation was the solar plexus. The feet would never go further up than the solar plexus, and the head would never go further down than the solar plexus. And they went to an anthroposophical doctor. This was in New York City. And he had a special preparation. I think he had it made for the situation, and taking that preparation, eventually the vital body was brought together. But that's a case where a person really knew how the we don't discriminate the difference between the vital body and the physical body. And when you have an incident like that, you certainly can, and you can recognize what is in your vital nature and what is in your physical nature. It's quite interesting. The doctor did tell her that if the head had gone below the solar plexus, she would not have lived. And if the feet had gone above the solar plexus, going the other direction, she wouldn't have lived. Now, not only is the physical body suspended in the vital body is suspended in the physical body in a very unique way. The seers of the Rosicrucian order, from which our philosophy comes, claim that the endocrine glands, the hormone-producing ductless glands, are actually not of the physical body. They are physical condensations from the vital body. It's very much like the picture that Max Heindel gives in the Cosmoconception, where you're in a room where there are holes and you can see these fingers moving in the holes without knowing that all those fingers are connected in a human being who's on the other side of the wall. And the vital body connects all of the endocrine glands, and it accomplishes what it needs to accomplish in the control of the dense physical body through those glands. And so the claim is that the endocrine system is in a way independent from the physical body. Things are usually affected in the physical body through the nerves. But the things that there are no nerves, with one exception. The posterior lobe of the pituitary body is connected to the nervous system. But otherwise, all the endocrine glands are stimulated by each other through the etheric gaseous component of the blood. So it's quite an interesting thing what they do. For this reason, endocrinologists as doctors have an extremely hard time working with people who have endocrine imbalances. They use hormones taken from animals, which means that we're trying to incorporate an animal vital body into our own, or they make synthetic ones. And what they're only making is a physical substance, and it's not integrated with the vital body. And dosing is extremely hard with endocrines because they are so trace and so faint that it's hard to adjust dosage, especially since with the vital body it does it on the fly because, there are constantly changes in the body, and the vital body working through the endocrine system can respond right away. But if you're dosing like once a month or once every half year, it's very hard to do. It's something, the way medical science goes about it, it's like trying to adjust the wings of a butterfly with a hammer. What?
What do you mean dosing, taking shots?
How much of what endocrine you have to take?
But don't they do it daily usually? You say once every so often? People, you're talking about like thyroid problems and stuff, right?
Yes.
Don't they take...
They can't really, they're constantly readjusting.
Oh.
And like anybody who has a thyroid condition, especially if it is a hypothyroid condition, despite the medicine, they have the moods that are because either there's too much or too little thyroid.
You just kind of off on a tangent here, but that seems to be a thing a lot of... I was with a doctor, do I have a thyroid problem? Why am I getting... And he said, no, you don't. But it seems like a lot of people have thyroid problems right now. I know a lot of people who are on thyroid medication, so there must be something going on.
Yeah, it's because they're not nourishing the vital body. They're only nourishing the physical body, and they're only taking in chemical food, and they're not taking in any etheric food that nourishes and gives the etheric energy, that flow, so that the vital body can be properly restored. They're trying to make another physical body out of it that's unwieldy and does not bend. All right, let's see where we are here. So there is a kind of teamwork between all of the ductless glands, and they all work together. Now let's take a little tack to get to where we want to get to. Let's go on a little side trip. Now, in the Bible, we are told that we are created in the image of God. In another place in the Bible, it tells that God is a spirit and must be worshipped in spirit and in truth. And if we put these two things together, it indicates that we are spiritual beings, that we are microcosms, that we are little beings that are very like, in our own way, the macrocosmic divinity. Now, Christian mystics have found that this is exactly true, that our constitution is like the constitution of the divine. It has to be, because that's what we're made up of. We're made up of the stuff of the divine. So we have a threefold spirit and a fourfold body. This is, we have the will to do things. We have the feeling and the love wisdom of the life spirit, and we have the doing or the activity work of the human spirit. If we don't listen to the Bible and think that we're spirits, we get into grotesque things. Some people think that since we're in the image of God, God must be like a human being. And you see all these pictures of God with a beard and all of that. And we get into trouble. That's a kind of materialistic literalism. Not good at all if we want to be attuned to reality. The thing of it is God does have a physical body. And that physical body is spread out through space. Wherever there is dense physical chemical matter, that is part of the dense physical body of God. And the principal amounts of matter are found in the planets. And so the planets collectively form the physical body of God, so to speak. I don't like, it's kind of tough to say things like that. So, if we follow this analogy of the body of God and the human body, we get to an understanding of the endocrine system. And that understanding of the body of God and of the endocrine system is very much helped by astrology. In astrology, the signs indicate areas of the body where things are, where spiritual influences are manifest. For example, Leo is the part of the body where the heart is and most of the spine. And Pisces rules the feet. But the planets in the body of God and in astrology are like the organs. So that Jupiter's like the liver and the sun is like the heart. And so the organism of the divine body is very much like the human organism. The organs are scattered around here and there. In a similar way, this is how the endocrine glands are manifest in the body. Some are around the kidneys, some, like the adrenal gland, the thyroid gland is in the throat, and the pineal and pituitary are in the cranium, and so they're spread around. In fact, some are little bit pieces spread all over, like where some of the endocrines are formed in the body. And the analogy is so close that each of the endocrine glands has an astrological rulership. So there's a direct correspondence between the planets and organs and the ductless glands. And this is really handy for a student of astrology, because most of us are in balance enough so that we function, but from time to time we are a little bit extreme and we become imbalanced. So we overstress some things and understress other things. And when we overstress something by doing it too much or accentuating it too much, we say it is hyperactive. If it is too little, it is hypoactive. And so the endocrine glands can be either hyperactive or hypoactive. Like, for example, hyperactive thyroid people are irritable and always on the move and pushy, whereas hypothyroid people are more than laid back. They have a hard time doing anything, even keeping up resistance in the physical body. And when the endocrine glands, which relate exactly to planets, are in a hyper state especially, there are planetary types of people. And those people are very valuable to the astrologer, because we can understand a planet in isolation. That is to say, we can see it and it alone, almost. So finding people who are hyper or hypo in an endocrine gland is very, very, very useful. You can't. Astrology is weak in its practice. You read the astrological magazines and they all say the same old astrological stuff, and there's not an understanding of character, and there's not a refined understanding of the gradation of character, of different emotions and things like that. And it's kind of frustrating. You understand that there's a great possibility of knowing what human character is like with astrology, but the astrology hasn't caught up. And so it's really valuable, and everybody seems to write the same old book. It's the very introductory. It gives the most basic statements about the nature of Mars or Jupiter or whatever, and it doesn't get into the fine points of things. So if you have, and since the books aren't available, you have to do it by observation. And when you have in observation something where you can see clear distinctions, like a person that is a thyroid personality or something like that, it's a good way to come to an understanding of human character. All right. So endocrinology is one of the faster growing parts of physiology. Some parts of physiology are not developing at all. Though right now there's a lot of emphasis on brain physiology, but for the rest of the body, I think they have mapped everything out pretty well. Probably haven't, but they feel that way. Now let's try to come at the subject from a different point of view. Something that's more difficult, and it's difficult because the only way you could do it right is to be a trained clairvoyant, so that you were skilled in seeing things and being able to identify them. So we'll have to work in a different way. We want to see for ourselves, and we want to know for ourselves without depending on things beyond us. The title page on the Rosicrucian Cosmoconception in the first edition is a quote from St. Paul that says, "Prove all things." And that suits our temperament very well. We have the temperament that we have to see things for ourselves, and we're all from Missouri. Show me, and then I might believe. However, there are times that we can't do that because it's just not possible. We can't, in most cases, teach calculus to a 3-year-old child. It's not possible. Some things have to mature and develop, and we're like that in our consciousness. In such times, it's a good thing to keep your mind open and accept things from people who can and who do have those capabilities. This is what we are asked to do when we read the Cosmoconception. Just keep an open mind, give it a reading, and then you can question and see whether it is right. Now, this is just one of those times, and so we're going to have to work accepting the results of seership from Max Heindel and other Rosicrucian investigators. Now, the seers of the Rosicrucian order teach that there's a special resonance between the pituitary body and the light ether. And there is a special resonance between the pineal gland and the reflecting ether. Now, if we assume this is true, this is extremely important to esoteric students. It means that if there is a dense concentration of light in the vital body, the light ether that we talked about last evening, that is developed by self-forgetting service, there will then be more of a screen for intuition to play upon, just like pixels in a screen on a computer. A person who has lived a life of service and who has attracted a lot of light ether is a person who literally walks in light. And if there's a dense concentration of light ether in the aura, then there is a very strong and dense concentration of light ether in the spinal fire. that which rises from the sacrum up the spine and into the cranium. If there's a dense concentration of light in the aura and in the spinal fire, that concentrated stream of light is what is used for clairvoyance, like for etheric vision, for example. In the etheric vision, one of the things that happens is that the pituitary body is, by a voluntary act, a deliberate act, it is set vibrating. And it vibrates across the stream of the stuff of spinal fire and produces waves that produce a virtual circuit between it and the pineal gland. There is a lemniscat figure 8 flow of spinal fire in the human body, going from the sacrum up to the skull and then back down again. But the route that it takes indicates the kind of consciousness that will be opened up. And when the connection is made between the pineal and pituitary, there is a projection of energy. And that projection of energy passes through somewhere deep behind the root of the nose, is a focus that is no focus. I don't know how to say it. It is called the seat of the silent watcher, which is the seat of the divine spirit in the physical body. It's also a seat of the center of gravity, so that if I were to walk up to Scott and put my thumb against his forehead in that spot and press, he would not be able to stand up. And it wouldn't have to be a physical thing to hold him down. It's because he wouldn't be able to get the center of gravity where he needed to in order. Does something matter, Jerry?
I just was falling asleep in there. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the heat from the light. I should maybe try getting the desk lamp and see if that works.
Fan on.
What?
Maybe the fan on.
Oh, yeah. Good idea. So, with a deliberate action, you can set a flow, and when the divine spirit sees through that flow of energy, this is when one has, for example, etheric vision. And there are specific exercises for doing that, and you have to be as far enough advanced to be able to do it. And you have to, as far as I can see from my own experience, you have to have spent a lot of time in your inner consciousness. And while you're thinking about things or pondering things or feeling things in your inner consciousness, at the same time you have to be watching. Because you find that when your consciousness is placed in a certain way, you come to a joy spot. And from that joy spot, all sorts of insights come to you, and even like the inner light changes. And this is a process that we learn to do. We can't receive esoteric exercises to do that unless we are familiar with what the exercises are about, and unless we have some practice and experience at doing that. And as far as I can see, it takes decades to be able to do it. That's maybe because I haven't developed enough from past lives. Now, let's look at, take a little digression and look at this a little more closely. First of all, if the light ether is not present in sufficient quantity in the spinal fire or in the aura, because the aura gets lit up and you see like pictures on the inside of your aura. It's quite a phenomenon. That's one of the things that comes up. If you don't have sufficient light ether, you can't do it. You can't drive an automobile without fuel. And this is the fuel. Now, what we're talking here about is controlled voluntary clairvoyance. We're not talking about mediumship, and we're not talking about being some kind of psychic or something like that. And no one can give life ether to someone else. You can't make a transfusion of life ether from one vital body to another. It has to be part of your own being, which means you have to have lived the requisite life in order to get to it, and to get it into you. We attract the right ether by living a life of service. And we use it in service. If you are a student of the mysteries, never, ever is any type or any grade of inner vision is never, ever used for selfish personal purposes. At the positive pole of the life ether is where the blood is driven. And that means that doing things from the blood and from the heart is how we get more light ether into us. It's a very important repetition, but a clairvoyant, in order to be a viable, healthy, spiritually healthy relative to our evolution, individual, the person has to be a spiritual servant. Now, a second fact is, this is a process that has to be in control. And the Rosicrucian Cosmo conception tells us very clearly it is under the voluntary nervous system that the clairvoyance of this type is unfolded. That brings us back to where we were just a few moments ago. The pituitary body is the only one of the endocrine glands that has a connection to the nervous system. The pituitary body is a strange thing. It has two lobes, and those two lobes are so different that they coalesce because they come from different parts of the embryo when the body is forming. And it is the posterior lobe of the pituitary body that is connected to the nervous system. And it is that, by an act of inner consciousness. Now this is something you really have to be fine-tuned in the control of yourself and in the control of your consciousness and your nervous system. It is through that the vibration that starts the wave that produces a virtual connection between the pineal and pituitary body, that it comes about. It has to be through mental control. And the thing is, it is the part that is not part of the physical body that sees through the illumination. That is the divine spirit in the silent watcher. So we see that since the pituitary body is ruled by Uranus, and the pineal gland is ruled by Neptune, and the pituitary body is connected with the feeling system of a mystic, while the Neptunian quality of the pineal gland is associated with occult qualities of a child of fire, that seership is attained through a balanced connection that is coordinated between the heart side of our existence and the head side of our existence. We cannot develop spiritual vision without having head and heart connected together, at least not a healthy kind of. You can force some things in other ways, and that is done, but that's not a healthy type. So we're uniting things together. And let's take another step in uniting things together and indicate that there's this harmonious planetary relationship. Uranus and Neptune are planetary opposites to each other. And as planetary opposites, they complement each other. So we're talking about becoming a complete human being. That is, having our mystic side and our occult side developed and working together in harmony. All right. When this is done, the light ether component of the spinal fire does its thing, and we begin to be clairvoyant. So now we're going to start looking at light and even the physical light that we see around us and look at it astrologically, and we're going to look at the light ether and Uranus, which rules the control of the light ether, and see it in different horoscopes. Yes.
So the mystic side is the head or the heart, and the occult is the other one?
The mystic side is the heart, and the head is the occult side. As most of you probably know, I have the sun in Scorpio, and Scorpio rules elimination. Eliminating things is one of the jobs that nobody else wants to do, and Scorpio gets those kinds of jobs. So Scorpio is in charge of the part of the chicken that goes over the fence the last. And I love cleaning house. And when I clean house, I love getting rid of things. But I sometimes get a little overly enthusiastic, and then I regret it. There have been many times that I have had to go to the wastebasket and fetch back things that I tossed out. But sometimes you can't even do that because it's gone onto the garbage truck and it's in the landfill. I used to have a horoscope that perfectly showed the correspondence between the light ether and Uranus. I had a friend that had phenomenal vision. We were out for a drive one day, and I could barely make out the shape of a road sign, and this person was reading it and everything that was on it. They said it was I was in awe at what that. I can be in touch with that person. She lives in San Diego now, but I don't think she wants me to have her horoscope. She's very political and very secretive about that. Unfortunately, that horoscope was one that I didn't retrieve from the wastebasket. So this other one will have to be first. This is the horoscope that is titled EK. It's a pretty good demonstration of light ether. It demonstrates the specialization of light ether in the optic nerve. And the optic nerve, in a way, follows the path of the light that flows in general through the cranium in clairvoyance. And the statement is that in etheric clairvoyance, one projects light out the optic nerve and sees into the ethers through the blind spot, where the optic nerve is one of the 12 cranial nerves that are the 12 gates to Jerusalem. And by consciously being able to work with the nervous fluid in each of those nerves, you can open up a different kind of consciousness in your being. So since some of the cranial nerves have to do with smiling, you should be able to smile yourself into heaven. Nice way of thinking about it. So let's try to be a little bit familiar here. Now this is the horoscope of EK. This is not a celebrity. This is an ordinary person like you and I. This person during his career operated cranes at construction sites. And he had, by report to me anyway, he had a vision that was so good that a nut of this size at half of a football field, he could tell that that nut was loose. Now that is very, very remarkable vision. So in this horoscope, we have the sun conjoined the moon, separating new moon, and so Leo is a very light, bright sign. Gemini is rising, and that indicates the tone of the nerves is very important, and the nerves include the optic nerve. The optic nerve itself is ruled by Uranus, and Uranus is quite beautiful in this horoscope. Uranus is in a grand trine with Jupiter and Mars. Mars provides energy, Uranus indicates the connection with the light ether, and Jupiter expands on it. When you have that kind of a grand trine, that's a very positive, controlled kind of thing. Mars is in Scorpio, and it indicates a desire to come to that kind of control. The Jupiter does the amplification of everything and makes the seeing possible. Now, extraordinary vision and continuity of it in the life ether is clear then in this horoscope. Max Heindel used to like to tell us that concentration and focus of energy, especially with regard to light, is something that can penetrate anything. That if you take even sunlight, you can burn your way through anything. In this horoscope, there's a nice conjunction between Mercury and Saturn, and that conjunction of Mercury and Saturn indicate where the concentration is very strong. And the two planets are in Virgo, which means Virgo takes things right down to a little point. So there's a lot of control. So it's not surprising that this is someone that has very excellent vision. The person might be somewhat worrisome with the Saturn and Mercury. That's always the case with Saturn and Mercury. Venus is not particularly strong in this chart. So you wouldn't say that this was a person who was, the moon is with the sun, but even there, the feminine qualities are not strong. And you would say this is someone who does not have a gentle, tender, loving understanding of women. All right, the next one is Ansel Adams. Now, in the other room, on the computer screens to the left, I have two photographs of Ansel Adams that are beautiful, but they're way too small. The one is a little pueblo under a full moon as seen from the side of a butte or the side of a mesa. And I have seen the large version of it, and it is one of the most beautiful photographs I've ever seen in my life. All right. Photographers are sensitive to light. And amongst photographers, Ansel Adams was probably one of the most sensitive to light and darkness. Now this horoscope is a classic for light and the pituitary body and the optic nerve. I'm not sure this is the right chart. It must be. The classic usually is of Uranus conjoined the ascendant. This is not that classic. This doesn't mean that every horoscope that has Uranus conjoined the ascendant will have exceptional vision, but if somebody's going to have exceptional vision, it's very likely that Uranus is going to be in conjunction with the ascendant or in the first house or something like that. I find it to be especially true if Uranus is in the axis of Sagittarius and Gemini. In this case, Uranus is in Sagittarius. In this horoscope, the majority of planets are in fire. And fire signs indicate an awareness to light, as we just saw in the first horoscope. Uranus is on an axis with Pluto and Neptune. They're not all in aspect to each other, but they are axial to each other. They are on opposite signs. And when there's the opposite signs, there's a tendency to, in the balancing of two qualities, to be sensitive and aware of both of them. Now, 4 of the 10 planets, the Moon, Jupiter, Venus, and Mercury, are in fixed signs, which is a pretty high number. This indicates patience. Now, both of the pictures that are up in the other room took years to photograph, because he knew what he wanted, and he would sometimes sit for hours until there was just the right instant of light that he could get the photograph that he wanted. And sometimes it didn't happen. And sometimes he had to come back to the same place for several years before he found the situation that he wanted. And that's the kind of patience that is indicated when you have a lot of fixed sign things. There is the Aquarian and air sign emphasis in this chart, and that is a relationship again to Uranus, and it shows an impersonal attitude toward things. Now, the malefic aspects that are in the horoscope are oppositions, and the opposition, more than any other aspect, attunes one to contrast, and this is the real value of his photographs. It's the understanding of contrast. It's not just that there's light and dark. It is working with light and dark so that you can see things better, or so that you can understand the perspective of things and how they are through the contrast of light and dark. Pisces is one of those planets that has extremes contrast in it. It can be melancholic in one moment, and then it can have divine ecstasy in another moment.
What was that?
Pisces, yeah. He has the sun in Pisces. Jupiter usually enlarges things and tries to take things to a grand scale, and Jupiter being opposite the ascendant, or on the opposite side of the ascendant, and on the opposite side from the moon, reflects things and it magnifies things, because Ansel Adams is famous for very, very large prints of things. All right. I'm a basketball fan, so we had to have at least one basketball player. This is the horoscope of the former professional basketball player named Bill Walton. Here we have a conjunction of Uranus to the ascendant. And let's look at several aspects of that conjunction. The pituitary gland, we have said, is ruled by Uranus, and it is said to be the captain of the endocrine system. Through Uranus and the pituitary, we find the influence not only of the light ether, but other interactions of the light ether in the horoscope and of the pituitary body. Now, one example of this is the ascendant, and the ascendant is the physical person. And in this case, reproduction is not normally the work of the light ether. Reproduction by cell division or by specialized division, as in producing sperm and ovum, that's usually in the life ether. But the control of that activity in the physical body is again in Uranus, because Uranus is captain of the endocrine system, and it sort of controls everything that way. Now, sometimes when Uranus ruling the pituitary body is stimulated, the growth activity gets out of hand, and it happens much more quickly, and it happens much more. So one of the conditions with a significant Uranus in a horoscope, especially with the ascendant, is giantism. That is when a person grows extremely fast and they grow extremely large. Bill Walton is only about 7 feet tall. He really isn't giantism, but he's close to it. What happens is when you grow really fast like that, more emphasis is put in the growth of the flesh, and the bones, which develop more slowly, can't keep up, and a person has weakened bones. And this is exactly what Bill Walton had. He had many fractures in the bones, especially in his feet. And they tried to blame it on the fact that he was a vegetarian for a while. Yeah, but he was a true Californian. He was into oysters and things like that to try to heal the feet of his bones. Uranus is opposite Mars, and that's a really strong opposition. And that aspect indicates pain. The afflictions between Mars and Uranus indicate pain more than any other aspect I've ever seen. So you can see that this is someone who paid a very high price for growing up quickly. Now, the Rosicrucian philosophy tells us that the blood is ruled by the life spirit, and that the bones are where the blood is produced, in the marrow of the bones. And the bones and the marrow of the bones are ruled by the divine spirit. That's one of the seats of the divine spirit. One is in the silent watcher, and the other is in the marrow of the bones. In fact, when we were still coming into our bodies, mystics used to chant poems, mystical poems, and they would touch their bones or hold the bones of their fingers. Especially these phalanges are associated with the signs of the zodiac. You have 4 elements, and you have 3 attributes, and so the whole zodiac is found in the 4 fingers. And by pressing your thumb against them like that as you're reciting poetry is the way they brought themselves into their physical body. The poetry was attuned to the etheric rhythm, and it was an incarnating type of thing. I don't know how to say it. This is why we say that someone has a feeling in their bones, because they're aware of the deepest aspect of their spirituality in their bones, the place where the blood is created. And this is why the incarnation of Christ into the body of Jesus was so complete, because there's an emphasis in the Gospels on the fact that not a bone was broken in the body of Jesus. And that was to indicate, because the Bible is a difficult thing to read. There are little hints here and there that just look, oh, that's a quaint thing to be being said. It isn't just a quaint thing. It is something to take our consciousness and give to our consciousness the fact that there's something more going on here. So we can see that the fact that Uranus and Neptune are part of a T-square. They're square to each other, and in that T-square are Mars and Saturn. So this is somebody that has a very, very big struggle. And it is in that big struggle between the Mars and Saturn are the malefic planets, and being together with Uranus and Neptune is a struggle not only between the mystical part and the occult part of his being. There is a struggle basically with his desires, and that is what played out in his bones, and it developed fast. So it developed so fast that corresponding to the speed of development was the pain that went along with it. It's interesting to note that among basketball players, Bill Walton was one of those wizards. I saw him once when the Clippers were still in San Diego, and he was just young on the San Diego Clipper team. I was living in San Diego at the time, and I got some free tickets to go to a game, and he was capable of all of those amazing, you don't know how he saw people even, because there's 10 people on a basketball floor and everybody's moving around. It's very hard to see who's where or who's going where, and he had that ability to make those passes, no-look passes, they're called. You don't look at the person you're passing to, and he would, he had the uncanny vision. All right, we're a little overstayed here, so better move on. The last horoscope is the horoscope of Thomas Merton, who I love very dearly. So we're trying to understand a little bit about the light ether using astrology. We're being not as successful as we'd like to be, but it's at least a right effort. Now, we've seen that the light ether is associated with Uranus. And the rulership of Uranus is the rulership of the pituitary body. And astrologically, Uranus has rulership of Aquarius, or Aquarius has rulership of Uranus. It's a dual relationship. It goes both ways. We've noted that Uranus rules the optic nerve, and that the optic nerve is one of the 12 cranial nerves. It's actually a pair of nerves, is the optic nerves. Now let's try to look at the ethers themselves as being the vehicle of light, as of someone who walks in light or who lives in light. We've already said that the endocrine glands and their hormones are condensations of the etheric vital body, and that they communicate with each other through the gaseous element of the blood. The blood and its center in the heart, and the center of the life spirit in the heart, is the representative of the life spirit or the Christ in us. Now, the Rosicrucian philosophy teaches that the heart becomes a voluntary muscle according to how much we act altruistically. It has to do with the two different kinds of muscles, longitudinal and striated muscles, and that the heart is one of the only parts of the body that has striations that are on what is considered a non-voluntary organ. And this is because the heart is becoming voluntary, and it's becoming voluntary according to how much we do things from the goodness of our heart. The heart path is the path of the mystic. The word mysticism in general means someone who works from the inside out, just as a materialist is someone who works from the outside in. In the small sense, mystic and occultists are two different approaches to living the mystical life. The head approach is the occultist, and the heart approach is the mystic view of it. So, if we do things from our heart and we live by our heart, which means we live by love, we develop our mystical side of things. And altruism is the nature of the life spirit. It is the kind of love that is taught by Christ, that we love the whole or the other as ourself. And that's extremely altruistic. Now let's take a few minutes to try to understand the consciousness of this mystic, and a little bit about the light ether and the pituitary, and Uranus and Aquarius. Aquarius is co-ruled by Uranus and Saturn. And Aquarius is an air sign, which means it's an intellectual sign. Thomas Merton, despite the fact that he was a mystic, was very, very intellectually inclined. He did many, many translations from the original Latin of Catholic texts, and he wrote a lot of stories. He wrote bestseller. I think he's the only person that is ever a Catholic monk that wrote a best-selling book. It was called what's it, Magic Mountain? No, I think it was. What? No, the Magic Mountain, I believe, was the name of it. I may even have it in the notes here. But he gave lectures, and he translated, and he wrote books, and he was very intellectual. He was a Trappist, and much of his life he was in periods of vows of silence. Despite that, he was a great conversationalist, and I loved him because he loved scatological jokes. And he saw the humor in them. Naughty jokes. He was a naughty mystic. What? Dirty jokes. Yeah, scatological means dirty. Scat is another name for fecal matter. All right. So he was very, very intellectual. He was able of discussing anything. He wrote what came from his heart, and it was good intellectual material. But because Uranus is the sign of modern things, of new things, fresh things, creative, different things, and that working through the Uranus in Aquarius, which is conjoined to Sun, his whole individuality was then new. And even though he was so profound, and even though he had so much respect after writing a best-selling book, the Catholic hierarchy was very, very uneasy about him because he was threatening the foundations of it. That's just what we expect. Uranus people are revolutionary people, even if they don't intend to start a revolution. He did everything straight from his heart. And because of this, he became universalistic. He became altruistic. He became friends of the man who was then the Dalai Lama of his time. And they discussed their meditational experiences, and this made the Catholic Church uneasy that he would be friendly with the leader of a totally different, a pagan religion. The Church had a hard time with that. So we see here all of the planets in Aquarius, which indicates a big focus on the light ether. We see Aries is rising. That's again that fire quality which we have been associating with light. The moon is opposite the sun and Uranus, which are in a close conjunction in Aquarius. And altruism is ruled by Aquarius, and friendship is ruled by the 11th house. And the ruler of altruism and friendship is conjoined to the sun, so we see this is someone that in his heart loved everyone and loved them altruistically and lived in the spirit of Christ when Christ said, "Ye are my friends." The 5th house, the opposite house, is the house of personal love. And at one time, he fell in love with a nurse who was half of his age. And they even consummated their love for each other. And it was sort of like the kiss of Parsifal, only once. And he knew that it was all wrong. And truly Catholic to the core, he confessed his sins to the superior of his order, and he went into several years of silence, and it was sort of like a citadel, an area of the monastery inside of the general area of the monastery, and he was in that for several years. So we see here then that he is a man of the heart. The heart also rules personal loves and things like that. He was so much of a mystic, and this is something it's hard for me to believe. Every day he got up at 3:15 in the morning. And for the next 7 hours, he was in continuous prayer. It's hard for me to conceive of somebody praying deliberately, concentratedly for 7 hours. It must have been exhausting. It must be super hard to hold your concentration for that long of a period. So he was mystic to the core in that he believed in honoring authority, which he did all of his life. And he followed his feelings even when they weren't pure, and through that he was purified. So there's no doubt about understanding the Aquarian light and the altruistic light. You cannot be a clairvoyant or a seer and not be an altruist, because in that light everyone is beautiful and you love everyone. All right, that's more than enough for today, I guess. Let's finish with the Rosicrucian prayer. O God, increase our love for Thee, so that we may serve Thee better from day to day. Let the words of our mouths and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in Thy sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer.
Hey, can you... Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, I just drifted off when you were doing your hand. Each finger is a...
Yeah. On each finger there are 3 sectors.
Yeah.
And there are 4 fingers, not counting the thumb. So that means there are 12 sectors. And those 12 sectors are associated with the signs of the zodiac. It's such a thing that at one time somebody came to me that was an astrological student and said, I broke my finger on such and such a day, and I can't understand astrologically why it happened. And we looked at the horoscope, and we looked at the horoscope, because the only thing that was right that day was an afflictive aspect to Jupiter, and Jupiter was in Aquarius. It was not in Gemini, which you would think would be the hands and fingers. And so I got the chart out, because I don't memorize these things, and I don't use it myself. And sure enough, the part of the finger that was broken was the part of the finger that in the hand was ruled by Aquarius. And the break happened right in a predictable place.
Which finger stands for what?
I'd have to get the chart out. I don't keep that from memory. I'm not a kind of person. I can remember all kinds of things if I've had an original thought about them, or if they have been inwardly meaningful to me. I can remember things very well, but I just don't remember data. I just don't at all. There are books that you can find that where they're shown. You had some, Jerry. You had something.
I was just wondering, and maybe it's not aspected at all when I look at it. But Mars to Neptune.
In which chart?
Martin's chart.
Yes, it is. They are opposite to each other.
No, Mars to Neptune. I'm sorry, Mars to Pluto.
Mars
to Pluto.
Mars to Pluto?
Yeah.
There's something. No. That's 150 degree. There may be something there. There may not.
Okay.
I don't know. That's something I'd have to sit down and study for a while.
I was thinking, when I looked at it the second time after I asked the question, I thought, that wasn't Cancer. That's not a sign. That's something else.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Get some.
Hey, one other thing. When the misplacement of the etheric body of that person, what was his symptoms? Did he have symptoms?
Well, if you think that your head is 3 feet above your head.
He physically felt taller, or
it was a woman.
Stuck in the earth.
Yeah. It felt like they were walking through the earth. The person felt they were walking right through the earth, even though they were walking on the surface of the earth. Like it was sort of like when you wade in the water.
Yeah, that's a good one, right?
So Richard, when you're subjected to incessant bombing.
To what?
Bombing.
Yeah.
Does that must affect the body, the vital body?
Shock waves, you mean?
Shock waves.
Yes, I'm certain it does.
So does it take a while for people to adjust, or do they never?
In some cases, our bodies, even the most crude human bodies and the toughest human bodies, have things that are so rare and sensitive that we just mess over all the time. And we are, compared to what we come to birth with, we malform the capacities of our body quite a bit, and we never can come to our potential because of the kind of life that we live. And people that undergo a lot of physical shocks, to say nothing of the psychological part of it, yes, they do harm themselves. It's, we have the sense of hearing. We have a whole generation of people that's going to grow up in their old age. They're not going to hear anything just for wearing those earbud things that project the noise right straight into the sound right into the ear. And they're strong the way they do that. You can walk down the street and you see a kid wearing those earbuds, and you walk by them and you can hear the music and they're not right. What? Yeah.
So the bombing must do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Max Heindel relates the story. He made a great discovery. He was working as an invisible helper in the First World War, and there were people that died when shells were going over, and they thought that it was due to a shock, or they thought it was due to fear from the noise. And he watched it very carefully with clairvoyant observation, and what he found out was, he found it out a different way. He found it out by, he was trying to save somebody who had fallen off of a cliff, and he materialized arms and tried to catch the person, but couldn't do it quickly enough. The person was lost, but he saw that the vital body came out of the physical body as he fell, and he couldn't understand why that was. And then going over the scene retrospectively in his consciousness, he saw that as the person was falling, a partial vacuum was produced behind the body, and the etheric body, being fluid as it is, filled that partial vacuum. And the person may have died even if he had been caught because of having the vital body ripped out. And then through subsequent clairvoyant investigations, he saw that what happened was that when big shells went over your head, they had behind them a partial vacuum, and it just sucked the vital bodies right out of people and broke the silver cord, and that was the end of their life.
I was going to say, I saw something similar to that, and a couple people killed in combat, and there was no physical damage to the body as such.
Yeah.
But it was just the shock of the blast
that
apparently removed the vital body.
Yeah. What? I imagine it can happen that way. They claim that some people do die they claim it's of fear. Yeah. I imagine it does happen. Skydiving? Well, skydiving is not quick, not fast enough, I guess. I don't know. They're trained to come down a little bit more gradually.
I went parasailing, and it was, I did the free fall, and it was just heavenly, peaceful, no whooshing or anything like that.
Yeah.
Just gorgeous over the mind.
I've always wanted to skydive. I wouldn't do it now, though, because I'd have no legs left because my knees and all are weak and brittle. And
Max talked a lot about the vital body and bathing and like hot tubbing.
Yeah.
You can overdo that, but it's really good for the vital body, but you can overdo that.
Yes.
What about swimming? I love to swim, but that's got to strip everything.
It all depends. That you take a child that hasn't been in the water for a while, and then they get in the pool and they stay in the pool, and you see their whole body starts to wrinkle. They've been dehydrated locally, or I don't know how you say it, topically dehydrated. But if you do that regularly, unconsciously in yourself, you hold on to the ether so that they aren't taken out into the water. So that people who spend a lot of time in the water, they aren't subject to that. And, it's sort of like adjusting. It's an acclimatization. But I would think that that's not good for spiritual development if you have that stance in you, that you're holding your vital body to you, and then if you want to be loose and free and leave the body and go out, and you still have in your subconscious nature had that hold like that, but I don't know for certain about that. That's there's some things that you have to have the clairvoyance in order to make the investigation to see. Yeah, there is something soothing about water, and it's a different element, and you're out of this. Yeah, you float nicely, and it's very relaxing.
Richard, when I use the cups that feel bad, I just put them in there. What should I be doing with this? Rinse them off?
Just put them in the sink, and I wash at night.
Richard,
yes.
The overture, do I also turn right on Dayton?
Yes. And you
just go a little farther and then I'll...
You go further and it takes you right, the street dead ends at the overture. But just before, just before you dead end, on the right is the parking ramp.
Right, and he's talking street parking too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
I just don't want to go the wrong